Finance will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or file a complaint, please contact Christina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at jmarczak@capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and all of that information is available on the website. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
With that, Mr. Fletcher, I will call this meeting to order with the opening ceremonies. With a moment of silence, please, for honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you. And now I'll have the Pledge of Allegiance stand for those who can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, after the phone call, I'll ask for a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
All right. Deputy Speaker Friesel?
Here.
Delegate Gallagher?
Here.
Vice Chair Killian?
Here.
Delegate O'Malley?
Here.
Chair Oman?
Here.
That's 5. There are no alternates here, but we do have all 5 members. So, and as we get into the first thing on the agenda, Mr. Chair, I did, as we discussed earlier today, let's make sure it's the right window that I'm looking at. I did create a list of at least the meetings and the budgets, and I did have Delegate Harder go first because she is the chair of Economic Affairs and is the vice chair of Public Services and will be filling in for Delegate Gesson, who is the chair of that committee. So it made sense, at least in my mind, to have her go first, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
That sounds good to me. I like orderly agendas. So with that, let's go to the Economic Development Committee, please. Delegate Harder, you're on.
Hello, everybody. So first, the Economic Affairs Committee met on Wednesday, March 16th at 4 o'clock remotely, where we reviewed the fiscal year 2027 Cape Cod Commission operating budget. Our review focused on the fiscal health and capital planning. The Environmental Protection Fund is strong. It ended fiscal year 2025 with a $10 million balance. This surplus exists because staff bill their time to grants instead of the general fund. And this practice should continue through FY 2027. Sorry, that the numbers were off. The commission follows federal reimbursement rates for all their travel, which they do for 2 reasons. One, for further training, but mainly because we have such a wonderful staff that they are repeatedly invited to give presentations. So the operational changes include moving a part-time planner to full-time. This is possible because we unfortunately lost the historic preservation, who was wonderful. The commission also plans to buy a building near the county complex for $2.2 million with renovations. The renovations will likely cost more than the purchase price, but the commission has $4.45 million in reserves to cover it. This move prepares for a 2028 lease expiration and will stabilize costs. So the members of the meeting agreed unanimously to vote to affirmatively, positively recommend this budget to the financial committee.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the Finance Committee. You can either raise your hand on screen or not. Well, I don't see anyone raising their hand, and I got to say that I've always been impressed by the way that the Cape Cod Commission puts their budget together. The biggest purchase, though, is this. I guess I'm a little behind the curve on this. The purchase of the $2.2 million building on Finley Way is great. Is it all going? Elizabeth, do you know that if it's all going to be put on mortgage, the old 2.2, is that going to be a full mortgage? There's nothing coming out of reserves for that. Do you know that answer?
As I recall, it's being funded by their own. I think it's being funded by reserves, but as we have Director Senatori here, I would, if I may, I'd like to have her answer that question thoroughly.
I see her. Director Senatori, please.
Yes,
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Oman. And I would concur with Delegate Harder. That is accurate. We do intend to use funding that we have identified and held in reserve for a purchase of a new building.
Thank you. And the other thing that she said that was very prescient to me is that you don't intend to be, you don't think you would be able to be in the building until FY 2028? Is that accurate as well?
Possibly earlier. Our lease does run until 2028. However, we do expect that we may be able to move in sooner than that should everything go according to plan.
And the landlord will be okay with you moving out? I'm sure that you've negotiated that.
We've certainly spoken to our landlord about this, and we'll work with them to make sure that this is beneficial, certainly on both sides.
On both sides. I think that's great. It's been a long time. I remember the late great George Bryant saying the Down Cape Cod Commission is so important, and they were in a hardware store. So I think this is a longer way to move, and I congratulate you and your staff. I see that some of your videos, some of your great staff is up there too. So yeah, congratulations on that. I think it's a great long-term decision for the Barnstable County and especially for the Cape Cod Commission. Those are my two biggest questions. And I do have one more, and I think I already know the answer, but the ratio of staff and benefits is probably reaching 83 or 84% of the commission's budget, is it not?
I'm going to see if maybe Gail or Maria want to correct me, but currently salaries and benefits are accounting for about 84% of our budget.
84, yeah, I thought there was hitting there too, but so we're all in that boat. You know, you got to keep a staff working, and you've got to keep doing that, but we have to be very judicious on how we add staff and or don't replace staff when necessary to make sure that you have a viable organization for years and years and years to come. So those are my questions. And now I'm looking again. I do see Delegate Friesel has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I recall, that the purchase price and renovations will be taken out of reserve funds. And do you have a handle on what those renovation costs might be?
Not at the moment. We don't have exact estimates yet on that work, but we expect to enter into a due diligence phase over the course of the next several months, where we'll have a better handle on what those total costs will be in their entirety. But we do intend or hope to fund all of that through reserve funds that we have set aside.
Any ballpark idea of what those might look like without being precise as to the actual amount?
I think, did you listen to Delegate Delegate Harder said that it's probably double the cost.
Did
of
you
the
say?
building
Oh, okay, I
itself.
missed
She
it.
did say
I
that,
missed
but
that.
I would defer to the executive director.
That was the general feeling
Mhm.
that we got from what was proposed to us.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? In this day and age, lumber could end up costing, and any supplies could end up costing $1 million a piece. So I think at this stage, it's very hard to make a solid guesstimate
Mm.
on what any kind
Well,
of construction is
I
going
was
to
asking that of the, thank you, Delegate Harder. I was asking that to the executive director specifically to answer that Delegate Freisel's question.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Chair Omen. So we certainly have a budget set aside. We would love to keep our costs as minimal as possible, but making sure that the building is the most efficiently used space for the commission. So we'll certainly do our best to keep those numbers down, but we do have about 4.45 million set aside for potential purchase and renovations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Further questions from the Finance Committee? I do not see any right now, unless you have
Mr.
another
Chair,
one. Yes,
I
a
could
second
move.
one.
I could move approval of this budget, recommending it to the full assembly.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Doc, I think you're saying something, but you're muted.
I'll second, sure.
Second from Delegate O'Malley. Further discussion from the Finance Committee.
And Mr. Chair, just to point out that that's a recommendation for the budget. However, I haven't had a chance to review the language of the ordinances, so there could be some proposed change in language of the ordinance, but the budget itself.
But the
is
numbers
recommendation.
are
Right.
in sync with you. That's
Right,
good to
right.
hear. Further discussion. Seeing none. Mr. Fletcher, could I have a vote? Roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
oh, Deputy Speaker Freisel, sorry.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes,
That's unanimous, Mr. Chair.
thank you. Delegate Harder, you're back on stage.
I'm back. All right. Now we're doing public services, right? So on Wednesday, March 25th, the Standing Committee on Public Services met remotely to discuss the following budgets: Registry of Deeds, Center for Public Safety Training, Facilities, Dredge, and Children's Cove. The committee voted unanimously to favorably recommend all of these departmental agency budgets to the Finance Committee as proposed.
Well, that was pretty succinct. There wasn't one thing that you could determine that may have been able to be deferred or not spent.
No, we were very pleased with the way the budgets had been presented. We were, I believe somebody wanted, I, of course, want to give the Dredge all the money in the world. They are doing a rate study. So some things may change in the future, but as I recall, it won't affect the budget as of now. And I think that was the only real point of discussion for now. Who else was on it? Am I correct? Administrator Dutton was there, I know. But as I recall, I think we were fine.
I'm sure you vetted the fact that they're asking for a new employee, which is always on my list of, and Mr. Dutton list that any new employee better be very well vetted, because he was the person who came to us and said we really need to not hire more people right now, given the tenuous nature of the federal government
Right.
in relation to the county.
You're talking about the dredge?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, the dredge, they desperately need it. Part of the reason the dredge sometimes does not meet its budget is because of permitting, of billing problems, of, um, you know, Ken being able to oversee all the monies and the data. So the person they're going to hire, will take care of most of that or a lot of that so that Ken can focus on the dredging.
Again, I don't want to dominate this conversation, but you mentioned permitting. We're going to have a person helping the towns with permitting. That sounds like a deep hole to go into to me. I hope that's not what you meant.
Not helping, but I think keeping track so that once a town puts in a request, I think the person's going to be able to say, great, give us your permit, make sure all permits are
Oh,
filed
yeah,
and everything.
organize the fact
Organizing, keeping track of things.
before any agenda is dating is so that they have to have all their ducks in a row. Is that what
Yes.
is that what that means?
And that's what
Yeah.
I believe. They're not
I'm
they're not going to be going to the Division of Marine, Wildlife and Fisheries. Am I correct, Administrator Dutton?
through the chair, please. Mr.
Thank
Dutton.
you.
Through the chair,
Through the
sorry.
chair. I can add a little bit of information to that is relatively correct. The new position that is being proposed comes directly from recommendations from the two different studies that the county commissioned over the past couple of years. Most recently, a number of recommendations, sort of a laundry list of different recommendations that could help the county, and what would fit best for the county is not to actually, at least right now, as the chair points out, is not to take over permitting and permit projects for the towns, but rather have someone in a position to be able to organize and keep track of the permits. One of the things that we have found, especially with a high turnover of harbor masters over the entire Cape, is that many new people are coming into these positions having no idea how to permit a dredge project, and it is very complex. And it entails federal permitting and state permitting, Army Corps of Engineers on the federal level, and several different agencies on the state level. So in order for us to most expeditiously do the work that we need to do, we want to make sure that we have permits lined up well in advance of,
Right.
6 months to a year in advance of when we actually have to do the dredging. And that's not necessarily happening right now.
That's been an emerging problem for several years, and I understand it. I'm just firm in thinking that the towns still have to do their share of the work, and maybe we can get help from the state to get a unified permitting process that would be. It seems a lot of this marine and fisheries, that it's outdated thought processes about the fawning of species in the harbor. It seems like the harbor master will tell you this. There hasn't been a flounder in our harbor in 25 or 35 years, and we need some help from the state. And say, like, lighten up and let us figure our stuff out, because we really need this for commerce and for everything else, for personal use. We need to dredge these harbors, and we've got the ability. We're saving 14 towns out of 15 towns significant money in their budget by doing it. We need to do this, but we can't get into the permitting. We just don't have the bandwidth for that. That's why I was asking that specific question. Thank you. I also see Delegate O'Malley and then Delegate Friesel have questions. So would you stay with us, please, Administrator Dutton?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as someone who's been watching this process, clearly the Assembly is very supportive of the dredge. We understand its significance to virtually everywhere on the Cape. And it's been a tough slog to carry it year after year when the budget just doesn't make it. And I think we went along with this suggestion for the assistant dredge administrator position on the understanding and on the assumption that that would enable us to attack the permitting and maybe the time of year restrictions sufficiently that this could turn around. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to be looking as we go into FY into the following fiscal year when we do the feedback on FY27. I would anticipate that our revenues have in fact gone up enough. I mean, that's an assumption we've made. It's an expensive assumption. We added another position, and I think I certainly hope that we can see that the addition of that person has smoothed operations enough that we see it in the revenue. And I'll leave it with that.
I agree. Delegate Prizell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the moment, I'll just focus on dredge because I have questions about other departments that were in public services, but I'll stick to the
Let's
dredge
start with the
for
dredge,
now.
please.
Yeah. So the dredge salary line is going up by 28, it's almost 29%, which is significant. $250,000. Is this all attributable to a new hire? I mean,
No, if I could, Chair, I
Yeah.
will answer that.
Yeah, yes, please do.
So there are two major factors playing a role here. One is the creation of a new position, which we've already explained, already talked about. Second is the changing the pay scale. So right now, our pay scale is woefully outdated. Last time the county went through a compensation classification study, for some reason it left off the dredge. So we've done a survey this year of where those dredge salaries should be, and that those changes are incorporated into this budget.
okay, but let me also focus on something else that stuck out with me on the budget. Fringes went up by 22.4%, 73,000 and change, an increase in fringes. How do we get there? How does that happen?
So the fringes, and you'll see this in other departments as well, fringes can drop precipitously and
Yeah.
increase a large amount.
Yeah.
And that is because we have people coming onto the county's health insurance system or people dropping the county's health insurance. And that is when you budget that group insurance by department, one change, one person going on a family plan in a small department can really show an outsized increase there. And conversely, somebody with a family plan coming off county insurance in a 3 or 4 or 5, 6-member department can make an outsized difference there. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll be talking about that in some other budgets as well, but what I'm going on to say okay with this budget is that we are still in an enterprise budget, and as far as FY25 is concerned, the last report we had from the treasurer was that she believes we are on a course which will match revenue with expense, so there won't be any need to dip into the general fund. I hope that is true. And now we're going to make it a little more challenging in FY27 to do that. I mean, you got a 7% increase overall in this budget. And we hope that you will have revenues, and that's the expectation, that revenues will match those added expenses. So this will not drift into any subsidy from the general fund. So on that basis, you mean I'm okay with your budget, but I'll have some comments about other budgets which are not enterprise.
I share everyone's concern over the vagaries of permitting, weather, and other oddities that are specific to the dredge that don't exist when you have an office job, something that is pretty steady. I mean, these are vagaries we have to deal with, and perhaps we have to have some kind of contingency fund if one of those years is off. And we all, I think it's in the county government, especially in the administration, we know that the dredge is one of the best things we've ever done for the majority of the citizens of Barnstable County. I don't use the harbors myself, but I know how important it is in my town to get Seward Harbor dredged and de-iced in this case, by the way, which was another thing that was an unusual expense that we had to pony up on too. So I totally agree with that. But I'd be watching the funding mechanisms and the ability to raise fees, or maybe not raise the fees, but add add-ons to the fees that say, look, well, you have to pay for this, and this too. You have to pay for the moving. It's not just the dredge per yard. It's how long does it take to move the darn thing, and how and weather and everything. We got to make sure that this is made whole with certainly some ability to bend when necessary. That's the vagaries of the dredge, and I was there when we got the dredge from the state, the $500,000. So I've been here too long, but I've watched how well it's doing. One thing that I think that we do have to say to every town, except Brewster possibly, or maybe even tell them anyway, is that look, if we don't have the dredge, you can't dredge, because they're not coming down here. Even if it's we're charging you 30 cents on the dollar or 33 cents on the dollar. If we're not there, you're dead. you're not getting it from other people. So we're your only choice. So buckle up, and do your job. I mean and I love the dredge, but as a finance person, I have to say, buckle up. This is your only shot at keeping your harbors open at a very, very reasonable price. Delegate Harder, please.
Thank you. I'm just doing my big push. All the harbor masters know how lucky they are to have a county dredge. And Ken has shaped up this department in a wonderful way since I first started knowing there was a dredge. I have always said I don't think it should be an enterprise fund, because it is one of the, if not the most public facing and important services the county gives to the towns. So the harbor masters understand the price. Sometimes the select boards don't understand the costs. And honestly, that, the problems are beyond our dredge department's control. So hopefully the new person will be able to help make sure the towns have their permits in place, so that, Ken doesn't schedule, all right, and then Yarmouth will take up these 3 weeks, and then we find out Yarmouth doesn't have their permit, and we've got 3 weeks not booked. Now this new person will be able to say, Yarmouth doesn't have their permit, book someone else in there. So, I mean, I think the dredge is doing everything they possibly can to break even and make money.
Thank you. Delegate Killian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments, not to belabor the point, but Delegate Oman and I have been around long enough to remember when the dredge kind of ran on autopilot. Year in and year out, it always did a great job. Never had issues with the weather, and I know that permitting has probably become more complex over the last decade or so. But I think most of us are in agreement that it has to be operated as an enterprise fund, and it has to be self-sustaining, because the county just doesn't have the resources to support it. And I think it's a situation where, and I certainly feel this way, if it can't sustain it, then we may have to discontinue the service. And that's why it's important that the towns that we serve understand that it's incumbent upon them to support it in a way that sustains it. And we've looked at this for a number of years now, and we all agree the importance of it, but I'm just not sure how long we can continue to, I don't want to say make excuses for, but kind of explain away what appears to be a operation that's struggling. And we've done, I think, everything we've been able to do to help it survive and be successful. But clearly, and apparently it's not enough, because it continues to have a difficult time when I certainly remember it was able to be very successful.
Yeah, we used to buy tape to get things done. We used to really really work hard. The crew that was there really had to Mickey Mouse a lot of things together to get that done. I remember it very well. Wayne Jadke was a great person, but it was a mom and pop operation under him, and it can't be that anymore. But I think what Delegate Harder said is something we just have to resound. Perhaps this new person can not only organize and say, you're not getting on the calendar until you have all your permitting in place. That's big if we can do that. But the other side of it is we have to tell those select boards that you mentioned, Delegate Harder, that, without us, you're not getting dredged. The people and the commerce that has to go through your harbors are not going to be there, and you're going to have to pay 100% and beg somebody to come. So I now see Delegate Killian again. Thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think the concern was that if we were to either raise our rates higher, or that these towns just wouldn't do it. They just won't do the dredging that they're typically doing now, or they'll go longer periods of time without doing it. Excuse me, in a way to save money. So I agree. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, but clearly it's something we have to pay very close attention to.
I would imagine that those towns would, if they did not dredge, would pay the price politically, because some of the wealthiest people on the Cape have boats that need to get out of those harbors, and the wealthier the person, the deeper the hull. So the more important the dredging, and they're not going out in skiffs. I think there would be I think that's a false statement. We have to say, we're saving you 70 cents on a dollar. If we can only save you 60 cents on a dollar to maintain the ability to do this for 14 towns, then that's what we're going to have to do. We have to put the foot down. Maybe it's a reworking, not maybe per yard increase. They seem to be focusing on that, but the moving parts, like if I got to go from Provincetown to Falmouth, there's got to be a cost to that that's separate from the actual cost of dredging. You have to delineate all the costs, just like a business would. You have to delineate every cost of the cost to get that done, and you got to pay it, or else you don't pay it, and then you don't get dredged, and then you can answer to your voters if you don't. So
I agree.
It's straightforward.
We've had those conversations, and I'm I'm not the one who raised the issue with the selectmen. It was brought up in discussions we had that they felt that it would just be a situation where not as much work would be getting done as the cost went up.
That's not our problem. Our problem is maintaining a viable enterprise fund. I do again. I talked to Mr. Dutton about this too. Is that there might be seasons where you can't, an enterprise fund can't do it because of extraneous circumstances, because of weather, because of a broken equipment. Remember, we had the last dredge we got was broken on arrival, for crying out loud. Dropped off onto the street, I guess. So I mean, there are circumstances that have to be considered because of the vagaries of this particular part of Barnstable County. It isn't just sitting there driving your car to work, punching in and getting on your website. It's different. So I want to remain whole, and I'd like to have a reserve. And I think we borrowed from the reserve for this budget. Remember? That Director Coppola said that we could borrow some of that money for that during one of our messages from their reserve. So get a reserve fund and make it whole and keep it whole. I think that's pretty straightforward and not easy to do. That's why we've got a new guy, and maybe he'll double his salary. He'll earn double his salary just by doing the right job. We need it. Thank you. Further questions from the board on just the dredge? Seeing none. Delegate Friesel, you have other things with Public Service Committee. Thank you.
Yeah, what I'd like to know is, I know Public Service has several different departments within it. Do you want us to vote on each individual department? So, for example, now we would vote whether we recommend the dredge budget. Or do you want to wait and see whether all the budgets reviewed by Public Service Committee?
I've been pondering that. Thank you for saying that. I'd like the opinion of the board. We don't even have to vote on anything, but we've already set a precedent. We voted already on the Cape Cod Commission, so we've done that. So I would say that maybe because this is a really important meeting because we're facing that May 6th deadline, that we might probably want to vote individually on each of the problems. So yes, I would concur with you if you said that you'd like to see a vote on the dredge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to settle this stuff, and if we can't settle it, then we bring somebody in.
Right.
And wait a minute, before I,
Right.
our parliamentarian has his hand raised.
If I might, if you don't mind, of course, the chair is the chair, and you guys on the finance committee or the members of the finance committee can do what you want within reason. But the idea is to make sure that you have all the information you need from the standing committees to make a final recommendation. So if you're prepared to make a final recommendation on the individual budgets, please do that. If there's more information that you need from the chairs, most of whom are actually on the committee. I see Delegate O'Malley, who's chair of Health and Human Services, and Delegate Killian, who's vice chair of this committee, but chair of telecom. Like if you feel like you have enough information and that you're done with that particular budget, please take a vote on that individual budget to recommend it. But if you feel like you need more from the chair or vice chair of those committees or staff, then hold it, because we're probably going to have to meet a couple more times before the report is done. But I think that's the standard. I personally, as someone writing the report and trying to make this clean for the assembly, would like a vote on each individual budget if you can. And if you don't feel like you're ready, I do anticipate that we're going to meet at least on Thursday and possibly on Monday as well. But just keep in mind that that's
it's well said and well stated. And I think the finance committee is appreciative of your thought process.
Yeah, again, you don't have to follow it,
mind.
but that's my fault. That's my recommendation to someone who's going to have to compile all of this. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will say, do you have does anyone have a recommendation on the dredge?
I move approval of the budget.
Thank you. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Delegate O'Malley. Further discussion from the board. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Just to be clear, so this is a recommendation by the finance committee for the full assembly to approve the budget for the dredge as proposed by the board, right?
Exactly.
And I know that that's what you guys mean. I can say it that way. I assume that's the format for all of these.
And if we're not, that is correct. So, and again, if we are not sure, we'll make that clear by not voting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I won't correct each one of these. So it's pretty clear what's going on. So for that roll call, Mr. Chair, Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Oman.
Yes.
That's 5 to recommend the dredge budget as proposed by the board.
Okay. Further questions for public services. I know that Delegate Frizzell is going to raise his hand, so I'm going to recognize him now.
Well, where do we want to go next? If we go to the facilities budget, right?
Yeah.
I only have one comment there. And so I'm just wondering, again, we see a fridge increase of 17.83, over $100,000 in that budget. And I guess the answer would be from Administrator Dutton that that's another situation where the health plans can have a great deal of impact on what the fringe number is. But, that makes it hard, doesn't it, to really budget?
Through the chair, the answer is yes. It does make it very hard to budget year to year when your fringe makes up so much of a particular budget. And again, I will just reiterate because it is pertinent. You do see a 17.8 and change percent increase, and that can reflect just a couple of employees that are switching to county plans. So that is the
100K?
case
Wow.
here.
Wow. Good. And while we're at facilities, I know this is probably not a facilities thing, but you have just sent a very recent memo to us about the $200,000 for the study that we have talked with Assistant Director Herrick about, and you yourself too. But it wouldn't, where do you want, where, if we decide to do that, and that, again, I'm 1 of 15. If we decide to do that, where do you want that money to come out of? It wasn't clear in your note that I noticed. Facilities would be an interesting place because that's a lot to do with it. That's why I'm asking it now.
So so because of the way we budget, with fringes in each of the departments, so we would take that that 200,000, and obviously, initially I would say we defer. I haven't had a chance to speak with our finance director about that, but my thought process is that if we budgeted 15% increase for fringes, or specifically for health insurance, and we got a rate that was more in line with 8% increase, the differential, I would propose using that differential to offset the cost of that indirect study. And then we'd have to develop a memo for you with specific line items in each of the departments, and roughly proportionally reduce all of those in order to fund the 200,000 for the study.
Well, time is drawing nigh for the proper procedures to do that. Will you work with the clerk with that so that we can get this done and decide whether or not we're going to do it or not? That's the first thing. I mean, I'm 1 of 15 that will say yes. And I will hope and pray that we don't dust it off in 10 years and say, look at that study.
Oh, no, it means too much to us, quite honestly.
There's several in your
Way too
office
much.
now.
Oh, they don't collect dust. But this one is important to the county.
Yeah.
It
No,
establishes federal rates that we can charge off, and it's timely and it is important.
And with all due respect, I wanted to make sure that the assembly knows exactly how to get this done in a timely manner, because time is drawing nigh. We have to have this to you on the 6th, voted on the 6th, or else we run into a time warp. So that was my question. I want to make sure that when it's discussed, so if we're not going to discuss it today, perhaps when you meet with us on Thursday or the following Monday, we can have that all put together so that we can recommend properly how to get this done, and whether we want to get it done, number one, and if so, how properly to take the savings from health and put it into the study. I just want to make sure that there's a path that the assembly understands. That's all,
Yep,
And
I appreciate that.
The memo came to me minutes before the meeting, so
Yeah,
and I read
and
it minutes before the meeting.
I did want to make sure that I got something to the committee just
Yeah.
to give you an idea of what our thought
Yeah.
process is. We've sort of talked about it conceptually, but I just wanted to put something in writing so that you knew what our plan was going to be. But we will get that to you for your next meeting.
Yeah, just to make so that the assembly can make a judicial decision on what we want to do.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. So now, Delegate Friesel, we're back to the meeting with public service.
Yeah, I just want to point out on that point about the global change to fringes. I mean, I think it's important this committee decide conceptually whether we're on board with that idea to fund the study with the reduction in the health insurance and all the other budgets. The administration can work out the numbers, but I don't think we should send them to do that if this committee isn't ready to say, yes, that's what we're going to recommend to the assembly.
Well, we should actually have the exact amount of savings that we said from going to, from 15 to 8. We want the exact number so that we know exactly what that number is, because we have to present the balanced budget, right? We have to have those numbers. We can't just say 200 grand, because it's not that the savings isn't 200 grand. It's something other than 200 grand, probably more, but I don't have those numbers. So is that where you're going with that?
Well, I thought that we were, at least conceptually, could vote on that idea. The actual number, we can see what it produces. But anyway, I just think the sooner we get to that the administration knows that that's what we're going to be, inclined to approve, the sooner they can get us the math.
I agree. Now, is this, as chair of public service, Delegate Hart, is this a question about that or a comment about the public service? Okay. You're
It's
recognized.
about, thank you, Chair Oldman. It's about, when we were having the discussion with facilities, we discussed the fact that, as of now, energy prices are soaring. And did we want to keep the higher budget for health insurance, in the budget as it stands as a buffer for energy costs?
I don't know how
And
you do that.
we thought that, you know, if that could be done, that might be a way to prepare for, you know, the energy costs rising so quickly.
I think that money would go back to the general fund if we
Yeah.
have the exact number, minus the
agree.
200 grand, if we choose that. But then it
Yeah.
goes back, and then we come up with another supplemental budget for energy if and when it's necessary. That's the proper way to deal with that. So, but we have to know exactly what we're saved, because not right now our budget is out of balance because of that much money that we thankfully saved in health, and thank God for that. And I know that I know that the administration worked very hard to get rid of some of the fat drugs and whatever technology and whatever methodology you used. It really helped an awful lot for everyone to be able to balance this budget. But now we have to have that number and do something with it to present a balanced budget as required by law. So thank you. I saw your hand up, Delegate Frizzell, but then if not, then I'm going to recognize.
Well, I just, you kind of answered it, but you
Okay,
know, you
good.
can't do it because those are two different categories, by
Yeah,
the way.
right.
So you
can't do
can't do that.
But I do see a hand raised by our parliamentarian. Clerk
No,
Fletcher.
and it's only because I heard vote, but also we've got the memo. And the reason why it was late is because Deputy Speaker Frizzell asked me to contact Administration Finance and make sure at least there was something in front of the Finance Committee
Yeah,
today
yeah.
on the chance that the Finance Committee would make votes to recommend various budgets, because the fringe costs are threaded through all of the budgets. And so we don't have final numbers because the administration rushed to put this together at the request of the Deputy Speaker and others. And so the idea, I think, is I don't know that you need, unless you want to, a vote on that concept, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, what the Deputy Speaker is getting at is maybe if you can get some consensus from the body before staff goes and crunches all of the numbers, because I believe they've got a meeting on Wednesday to get some direction from their board, but also it's a lot of work. So if that's not the way that the Finance Committee wants to handle that particular topic, it would help them to know what the consensus of this body before they go and crunch all those numbers and give them to you to thread in.
Yeah, the
Does that make
administration
sense?
has properly asked us to vet this, and
Yeah.
they came up with a number of 200,000 savings, but they didn't come up with the number yet. I'm sure it's there of how much the actual savings on health costs is. So we have to know that so we can put together a budget like a Lego. It all has to fit in balance, right?
But more to the point, pleasure of this committee and the chair. I don't know that you need a definitive vote on that so much as you got to give,
Not yet.
hopefully give them some consensus as to whether that's the approach that you want.
Yeah, okay. We can that we can recommend that through the Finance Committee, but obviously that's not a vote to pass it. That's a vote to recommend to the full assembly. That's all it is. So we can do that, and once we have all the information in front of me. We got next Thursday and we've got next Monday. So we got two bites at the apple, but time is, as you know, drawing nigh. I've said that enough times. Anyway, so that is facilities. Is there any further discussion on facilities? And remember, we don't have to vote on this. We can or we cannot, at the discretion of the board of the committee. Delegate Frizzell.
I move approval for recommendation to the Assembly of the facilities budget as submitted by the board.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Now I need a second.
I'll second.
I heard a second. I don't know who it was, but that's okay. Further discussion on facilities only from the Finance Committee. Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Oman.
Yes.
That's 5, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. There is at least one more from public service.
It's actually 3 more.
3 more. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
trying to.
3
Okay,
more.
Delegate Frizel.
I'd move to the registry next. I just have a question there about, and this is kind of a question about a lot of the budgets. I see in the budgets, they all have step increases. And, we see and continue to see growth in the salary line, in part because of COLA, of course, but we then see these steps. Can someone give me some idea of what these steps are like? And do they ever stop? I mean, do you reach a certain step and that's it? You're capped?
I have some thoughts, but we have an expert in the field right here on the screen. Administrator Dutton, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, for referring to me as an expert. I don't know about that, but I will say
Well
that
versed.
maybe well versed. We do have, I believe it's a 12-step within each grade. So let me back up. So each job is classified into a grade, and depending on the importance, depending on a bunch of factors. I shouldn't say importance; they're all important, but depending on the role that each position plays, and whether it manages staff and so on and so forth. So within that grade, there are multiple steps, and I think in our case we have 8 steps. And between those 8 steps are 3% increases. So if you're here year 1, you come in at step 1. The next year you are at step 2, which is a 3% increase, and so on until you max out at step 8. And by the time you get to step 8, I believe there's a 1%, or there's a performance bump. But it's not a continuum. It's not additional steps. It's just a one-time hit if you satisfy a performance evaluation. So to answer the delegate's question, yes, you're within a grade. You've got 8 steps. If you're here for 8 years, you have a step every year. It is automatic, unless your performance evaluation is something less than satisfactory. Which does happen. It does happen on occasion.
Really?
And then so over and above that, the county is over the years has been in the practice of applying a COLA, and so it can be a 3% for some employees that haven't stepped out. It can be a 3% step increase plus whatever the COLA amount is. So I hope that explains a little bit.
That does explain. That's helpful. It just, to me, makes it clear how, this growth in cost of personnel is eating into and crowding out other things you might want to do in the budget that is not a personnel cost. And especially, and we'll get this when we get to the Cove, when it far exceeds what is happening in other departments. So this is something that, really is a problem as we look to the out years, which we got projections already from the finance director. We're going to be in deficit in the out years after 27. And it's going to cause some hard decisions about how we configure the county government priorities and what we do.
I agree. Administrator Dutton has addressed that, and I know that it's easy to say things and not hard to get. It's really much harder to actually accomplish. You were saying, who can we get away with not rehiring? If they retire, not replacing. And I think that's a really important thing. I mean, we Director Coppola said the same thing. She mapped out when we're going to be in deficit, and that was a pretty scary thing for me to see in my 30th year with the Assembly. I want us to be successful, and costs are raising up. And the other side of that coin is, honestly, what I shouldn't be saying this as chair of finance, but as a business person, employee retention is really important. But maybe sometimes you don't need that employee anymore, or they retire, you figure out how to not replace them. You know, there's got to be a way that we curb that growth, as Delegate Friesel said. It causes sleep loss with me thinking about that. In both of those terms, employee retention is very important, but do we really need every employee we've got? And if they retire or they don't perform, there must be a way to at least ensure that we slow down the pace before we're in deficit, or else find a new revenue source. You know, that's the other side of this. You know, I have no clue on how to do that, but because we are pretty much where we are. So Delegate Friesel, I'd just like to say I'm in total agreement with what you just said, but it's up to the administration to come up with that plan, or it's up to us to cut it on our own. If we had to do a few years ago, we cut 3 employees, and that did not make the administration happy. It's before your time, Dr. Dutton. But you know, I mean, at some point in time, we all have to get together and make sure that we are fiscally viable going into the future. So thank you for that. Okay, you want to go right into the next one then? Do you want to vote? Do you want to vote on this? Have we voted everything?
I would move the registry budget as proposed by the board.
Yeah. Okay. And do I have a second? I do not see a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Killian, Delegate Killian said that. So the registry, any further discussion on only the registry of deeds? Our biggest source of income. That being said, roll call vote. Clerk Fletcher, please.
Deputy Speaker Friesel,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes,
That's 5, Mr. Chair.
thank you. What's next, Clerk Fletcher, on this, on your list of Delegate Harder's proposals?
The Center for Public Safety is one of it.
Center for Public Safety, that's what I've got here too, yeah, okay. Okay. Public safety, please. Anybody from the Finance Committee have any questions on the presentation of, everything was peachy keen?
Well, I can ask here, Mr. Chair, just a
Yeah.
global kind of question. In a lot of these budgets we've looked at and reviewed, and this is another example of it here in the public safety. But how come we see many years such a big difference between the budgeted and the actual? How come we're seeing such a difference? And it's not just 1 year, it's like multiple years where we see that. Is there something underlying that can help us to understand that?
I think,
thoughts.
I'm sorry, through the chair, the only thing I really can add here is that we have a group of department heads and deputy department heads that do a fantastic job of securing grant funding when they can. They also, more importantly, do a great job of purchasing the goods and services that they need, and not that the budget allows. So I think that's a great part of it right there.
Thank you. By the way, I wasn't complaining. I just wanted.
No, but it's very observant. As this is just another budget for me after all these years, I've noticed that they almost every department returns something to the general fund, and that's welcome. You know, but I think that's the way to do it too. Is give them the money that you think they need, and if they can save money, you know, that goes a long way to preserving the viability of Barnstable County. Yeah, it's been pretty consistent over the decades that I've been in service here, Delegate Friesel. So I'm always appreciative when that happens. Okay, so public safety. Any new hires there? No?
No, sir.
I know Andy came back. I'm not sure how he was fit into there. Andy was a former AmeriCorps guy that is welcome back. I've been keeping in touch with him over the years. I'm grateful to see him back.
He is a good addition. He's not paid through this budget. He's paid through health and
Okay, so
environment
that's
budget.
clear.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought he was public safety. The way he, okay, got it. Thank you. No further discussion. Well, there is actually. We have Delegate O'Malley from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So clearly, this is an important service that the county provides. But it's another service that we're providing to the town, and this is one where we don't charge them anything. And in fact, the county is on the hook for this $60 million cleanup at the old training academy because we provided the site and the towns used it and they sprayed foam, and we're now covering the bill. I have no question, but that the training is important, and that if we can do it on the Cape, it makes a lot of sense not to have them go to the fire academy out in Central Mass, wherever it is. But I have to question whether the model here of not charging, why it differs from IT, why it differs from the dredge. We're providing a service, and it seems to me that we ought to be reimbursed for it, particularly given the budget constraints that we see coming down the line. As I repeatedly pointed out, we have nowhere to go to increase our revenue, whereas towns, like it or not for us, can raise taxes to cover the budget. So, I'm obviously prepared to vote in favor of recommending this budget, but it is one where I think that discussion of, do we continue to provide this service at our cost to the towns going forward?
It's an excellent point, and I would say to me that's something for FY28, and that's something that we can put on the agenda with your leadership. We can put that on the agenda, saying, look, if you want this service, we've got to maintain an ability. If we can't raise any taxes, we can't do that anymore. Then we have to charge fair value for services rendered when it's true, or not use them. I don't.
And I think that's realistic.
That's a 2028 decision. That
Yes.
can't be really talked about.
Not for now.
Wasting our time right now.
I agree.
Not that it's a waste of time. It's not pertinent to this discussion today. Thank you. I will recognize Delegate Harder, even though she's not on the committee.
Thank
And
you.
then I'll get Director Dutton right to that.
Thank you, Chair Oman. I just wanted to fill in a few things for Delegate Vice Speaker, Deputy Speaker Friesel. The state has taken over part of the training, so that's one of the reasons costs went down. And they also didn't need to buy as many, they had to buy all the county personnel new suits because they can't have PFAS, they have to be up to code. And they only had to buy 8 instead of 9. So that's why in this budget it was much lower.
Is that everything? I'll say that you're finished with that. I'm going to go to Director Dutton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a plug for what will come at your next meeting, the internal or the indirect rate study and the external rate study. And I think Delegate O'Malley hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what this study is going to look at. What services are we providing? What's the value of those services? And how could we or should we monetize or charge for those services or not? And so that's my plug for that when the time comes. So thank you.
I'm glad to hear that's going to be part of it, because I think that's a good reason to have a study like that, is to find out what towns can afford and what can we afford to give towns, It really is an interesting question that, it's always been that way is with fire training and police training. It's always been that way sort of thing. It was not a great response. The answer is, or we won't be a county anymore. If we provide services with no hope of monetizing it back again. So thank you for that. Okay, Delegate Friesel, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this has been a very good discussion. I like what I'm hearing about monetizing. But I would move now that we approve this budget as proposed by the board.
Thank you. Now I need a second.
I'll second.
I have Delegate Killian seconding. Any further discussion from the board? Delegate Friesel, I think your hand is still up, but you no further discussion. With that, Clerk Fletcher, roll call, please.
Deputy Speaker Friesel,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
and Chair Omen.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I believe that leaves us only one more in the Public Services Committee, which is the Cove.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I have some questions about that.
Go for it.
Thank you.
So
First
do
of all, first of all, I want to congratulate the Cove on an excellent report in response to the questions this committee proposed last December. And I think this committee put together some very good questions to examine that department. And I think it serves as a model for us as a committee going forward into FY28 to think about whether we want to do that kind of a deeper dive on some other budgets like we did with the Cove, because I think it was very helpful getting that volume of information, 30 plus pages, which the Cove provided. But let me tell you what strikes me about this. First of all, the Cove, along with everything else actually that we review and I review here with the county, we do good work. We provide good services. I don't think there's any question. I'm not at least doubting the value of what we do as a county in providing these services, but we cannot be all things to all people. And that is going to come at us, not in FY27, but probably in FY28 and subsequent years. And in that light, what I saw in what struck me the most about their budget was the fact that from FY24 to FY26, we've seen a 21.78% growth in that budget. And the growth is at like 9% a year in the last 3 years, far exceeds the average increase in other departments. So it far exceeds revenue growth. I mean, our revenue growth in the excise tax is 4 to 5%. Our revenue growth in all revenue sources in the FY27 budget is 6.6%. The increase, to the extent to which this department and any department is going to be using resources at a percentage increase rate that exceeds the revenue growth of the county, they are therefore going to necessarily, unless we dip into reserves, which I do not favor, and I don't think anyone does, they're going to necessarily be crowding out what we do in other departments. That's the only place to take it, is from something else. There's only so much in the pie here. And if they're taking a greater percentage of the pie than the growth of revenue, that means you're necessarily taking it somewhere else. So that then means, is that the right way to spend our money? It could be. It could mean that, but it has to be in my mind an intentional reorienting our priorities. Not we get there because this is the way the budget fell out. It has to be intentional that we want to use other departments, otherwise share of the increased revenue to subsidize, if you will, a higher share of the revenues beyond the revenue growth that's coming, the organic growth, for other services we provide. To me, that report really presented that issue. So I'm not saying we don't approve the budget. I'm just saying it presents us with this kind of future decision-making that's going to have to go on. And so approving this budget this year and this amount here in any other budget, which exceeds revenue growth, means we are giving somewhat higher priority to the delivery of those services over other services we're providing in the county.
Were you able to find anything in their budget that you thought we could look at to perhaps get them far lower than 9%? Was there anything that you thought was something?
I'd have to, yeah, to me, the growth is in salaries and compensation. And this comes down to where are their salary levels? What grade are they in? What, steps are they in? And this is what causes the increase in that budget item to keep creeping up. And I can't evaluate that. I don't see anyone's salaries here. And so I think that it's because of the services they're providing. They've added some services through grants, but the people who are on the general fund are getting these increases. And I can't evaluate whether the compensation levels are correct, but to me, that's where the number is. It's in the compensation.
I kind of feel the same way looking at it too. I got to make sure that, I love what they do, but sometimes the staff increases, like you said, we can't, what would you just said? We can't be everything to everybody all the time. We just can't be, no matter what. I think a former county commissioner, Bill Doherty, said that thing to but I agree. But the other side of that, the Cove depends on the county for all of their budget. And honestly, the Cape Cod Foundation has money. The Cape Cod Healthcare has money and other healthcare organizations have been giving CACs and other counties that kind of money. I'm not sure that there's not a methodology. I remember when they used to have golf tournaments to raise money, but that was back in the day, I guess. But there's got to be other ways, and many other counties. It goes, some of that, a good portion of it goes through the district attorney's office, but apparently that has never been the path for our government. And now we remember our district attorney is not a county district attorney; it's the Cape and Islands district attorney. He has 3 counties, and now we've added services through the district attorney to them, and there's reasons to do that, but I don't see any compensation coming from those other 2 counties. And I think that's something that I've asked about, and I've been chastised for even asking about it, but that's my job as county. And again, it's not what they do, it's how do we pay for everything for everybody all the time. Just what you said, and that is where the rubber meets the road. Now that you point that out, they've had an annual increase of 9%. That's serious. That's a serious stuff, and it's not what they do. It's how can we afford everything for everybody all the time? And the answer is you can't. So that's my and I think with that being said, I'm gonna not say anything right now, but I see that Delegate O'Malley has his hand raised.
Right. Just to follow up on this, I'll remind everybody, we did a pretty deep dive on this a couple of years back when the Cove was still under the Health and Human Services subcommittee. And we are the Cove is the only child advocacy center in the state that is carried by the county. Every other one is funded by either through the district attorney or through a hospital or through some of them through not-for-profits. And I think maybe there's a case to be made for approaching our delegation to see whether the district attorney's budget might be increased to provide some support there. Clearly, it's sad to me if the volume of cases has gone up enough, although it says level services, if the volume of cases have gone up enough to be responsible for this large budget increase, that being the case, the work needs to be done. But pretty clearly, we're in a situation where we can't absorb it all. And I think maybe exploring whether the state, through the district attorney's office, could pick up some of that. That's for another.
Not this year.
Day.
That unfortunately, that should have been done, and I think we've asked that question going forward. And I've asked the district attorney, and he's like, not my job, so, but he's got a race. We can put some pressure on him to start thinking about this more. I think he's doing a great job, but why is he off the hook? Because the last district attorney was off the hook? I don't get it, but I agree. And as a result of that, I am not ready to take a vote on this, but I will offer up to the vote for the rest of the board. We can take a vote on it. I will not be able to vote positively right now for this. I need some more time. Delegate Prizell, please.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I understand the, some hesitancy in voting it, but is there some information you need in order for you to find your way to be comfortable with this budget? I just want to know what it is, or you just want to think about it some more, and that's just it?
I need to think about personally, just me. I'm not advocating for anyone else in this, but I'm kind of surprised that Public Services didn't ask the same kind of questions. The 9%. I think that those are the kind of things that they should be answering. Why do you have a larger increase than every other department in the county? Not that I'm not attacking the work at all. That always seems to creep in, but some false allegations that I've heard from the grapevine. It's not that at all. It's that we have to have, the county has to survive, and these are the kind of things that I think some of it may be correctable by other revenue sources other than the county alone. Or we have to put a cap on their spending and make sure that they do ask the Cape Cod Healthcare and the district attorney's office and put some pressure on themselves, because that seems to be de jure how it's done in other parts of the state of Massachusetts. And and besides the budget, remember, we're giving them a building, that's part of their budget. But I don't think there's another CAC in the state where the county gives them a building to live in, and I'm glad we do that. But and if you've gone over there, they deal with the most vulnerable population on Cape Cod. It's not what they do. They do a great job. But the answer is we have to have every department stay in their own lane. Every department has, or we're not going to be a county anymore. That's my goal, and I have to think about it. Personally, I have to think about it some more, but I've said enough. Is there a motion on the floor to put on the floor? Delegate Prizell.
Mr. Chair, I would be in favor of just holding this budget for now, giving you some more time, as you've asked, to think about it, and we can revisit this budget on another meeting. Fine with me.
Well, until a further finance committee, we'll put it back on the agenda maybe next Thursday.
Yeah.
Delegate Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there some specific information that we should be requesting so that we can, when we meet again, make sure that we have exactly what it is we're looking for? I think that's important rather than just to leave it open-ended. I think, as other delegates have pointed out, we've had this discussion on numerous occasions over the years. And I think the prospect of getting funding from the state is dim at best. But I think, as Delegate O'Malley pointed out, it's certainly worth pursuing. And I would think our best bet for that would be the our Cape delegation, if we're going to try and get some more funding for it. But my point of the comment being, we should outline the information that we're looking for and what to make that decision going forward.
Yeah. I don't think there's any new information about budgeting that we can come up with. We can ask those same. The 30-page report was very thorough. I agree, but the answer is, the question could be, how do you have the highest increase in budget for the last 3 fiscal years in a row? That's the question that should have been asked already, but that there hasn't been asked. So I don't know if I can answer that question again in the next 3 days or 4 days or 6 days. I don't think that the answer is coming, but it's just a concern. I just kind of have to reiterate what I've been saying for months and months about this. There's got to be another form of doing this. It has been the Cape and Islands district attorney for, I think, 50 years. I think is he is the third district attorney under those new regulations. The third one back actually invented the Cape and Islands. They didn't exist. But that being said, we have a 3-county district attorney, and it, no matter how you slice it, that's more money spent on everything, every nuance and every thread that when they say, well, we get a free room, well, you don't get a free flight, you don't get a free boat, there's added costs in all kinds of different directions because you have a second and a third county asking for more help and not providing any help themselves. That's my attitude. No financial help. But I don't think. So I'm just kind of putting my foot down. But I really don't have a 6-day answer for this. To go forward and change it. So that's my problem. My problem is that, given what Delegate Friesel said about the increase of 9% a year for the last 3 fiscal years, that's disturbing in itself. Not what the work they do, but the cost of doing that work. And it's concerning to me. That's all. And I'd say the same thing for any department that came to us with those kind of numbers. It's not the Children's Cove, except that happens to be the case with the Children's Cove right now. We had the same discussion with the dredge. We've got to be able to have a county that is viable. And Director Coppola was very, very clear about the direction of our viability in a recently passed meeting. So that's all I got to say about that. So I'm ready for anybody to make a motion. Delegate Friesel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have thought of what I think would be helpful perhaps for you, and it would be for me, for additional information before we vote on this. I mean, the budget on the general fund, which is proposed at $681,641 for fiscal year 27, it's only covering a few positions in the whole operation, none of which is clinical care. That money is spent on administration. The total budget with grants for the Cove is over $1.2 million. So the other 600-some thousand providing clinical care is what's being provided by grants. So we're spending $681,000 on administration of the Cove. So I think it would be helpful for us to see the compensation for the last 3 years for those individuals in the Cove that are being paid out of the general fund, not the grant people out of the general fund. I mean, I would also ask whether, we are properly allocating to the fringes from that budget to the grants. That's one of the things which is important, that the grants pick up their share of the fringe. So
Right.
Those are pieces of information that could help us to get a little better handle on what we're seeing in this budget. But that to me is worth looking at.
And do you think that there's a timeline for that information to get to us? I mean,
Well, by next Monday.
Yeah.
I think they can get it within a week.
And I think the methodology of that is to ask either the administration directly or Owen to work with the administration to get those numbers by next Monday.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good chance. That's a good ask. Delegate Killian, please.
I would only suggest that we try to get them by Friday so that we have some time to look them over before the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 days. That's a big ask, but we have three administration members at least here. You've heard us, Director Dutton. Do you have any ideas on how to get that done? Is there any way we can find that kind of? I know that Director Coppola is here as well too, but
we can whatever information the committee needs, we will get to.
Yeah, but you understand what she was getting at was the fringes for the grant money come out of the county, and why? That's a really good question, and we've kind of asked that question in a different way several months ago and on. There's been this, and again, we're not doing this. We're doing this for the benefit of the longevity of the county. It's not asking too much of that. And the other one is the administration cost is and the benefits there too.
And,
it's-
and,
it's-
and, and Mr. Chair, to see the positions that are being funded by general fund, what they're compensated at, and how they've been increased in the last 3 fiscal years by steps and COLA.
Good.
Yep, easy to
Okay.
do.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Delegate Friesel, for that intuitive knowledge that you have and getting to the point where I was trying to get. All right. I see parliamentarian and Clerk Fletcher has his hand up.
This is for clerk, because we have 1.5 FTEs, so Emma and I wear a lot of hats. But I would say we've had Carol Coppola, Director Coppola, Treasurer Coppola, waiting patiently to talk about the finance
Right,
budget.
good point.
We've been here 90 minutes. That doesn't mean, I would like to point that out and say we're pretty much committed to meet on
I was leaving
Thursday.
the agenda up to you, Clerk Fletcher. So
I know that you've just returned from quite a big adventure, and that's why I'm just suggesting for everybody's information.
I'm not bragging, but 48 hours ago I was floating in the South Pacific.
Well, we're glad to have you back. I just wanted to say that
Hopefully you were above the South Pacific, not in it.
At times.
But I do believe that's all we have for reports from chairs or vice chairs that are not on the finance committee.
Good.
We do have the finance department and shared costs on the agenda, but we also have reports from Telecom and Health and Human Services and Natural Resources Committee. So perhaps, given that we know we're meeting 2 more times, you'd like to make some decisions about how we're going to handle the rest of the meeting. I assume we're not going to finish today.
I want to hear from Director Coppola, and then maybe we'll shorten this meeting and attach it to the next meeting. I understand what you're saying. I'll defer to the board on that, but I would like to go right to Director Coppola because she always has very, very concise information for us.
Thank you, Chairman Oman. I'm presenting to you the Finance Department's budget for fiscal year 2027. This budget has some significant increases and also some decreases as well. We have initiatives on partnering with IT to have our financial accounting system hosted by Tyler Technologies rather than the county hosting it internally. Internal hosting comes with cybersecurity risks and other significant risks. And so working with the director of IT, we came to a strategy that really makes sense for Barnstable County and reducing risk. There's an associated reduction in cost for IT for Microsoft licensing of $30,000. However, hosting services come with a cost associated. It's an increase in the finance department's budget of $80,000. $8,000 of that is a one-time cost. In addition to that, we have some initiatives with procurement as well. We have a procurement marketplace that we're bringing forward for Barnstable County, for the total of Barnstable County. This really streamlines procurement and purchasing for all departments, for all employees within Barnstable County, and it integrates right with our ERP system, which is called Munis. It's our financial system. Those are the initiatives that we are bringing forward. In addition to that, we've got some reductions as well. Currently, our original budget that was proposed for 26, and that was adopted for 2026, included 11 full-time equivalents. We're reducing that number as we're proposing to 9. And in that instance, we have secured in the current fiscal year grant management services and outsourcing those that replaces 2 full-time equivalents. the procurement office has reduced their e-bidding software to support their the increase of the procurement marketplace. That procurement marketplace, as I had mentioned before, does come with a cost. There's a $17,000 one-time fee, and that's a setup cost. And so next year you won't see that recurring. Just as I had mentioned before, you also won't see a hosting services of $8,000 for our ERP system recurring, as that's a one-time cost as well. We're bringing forward a recommendation for electronic budget book once again. That's an additional cost of $8,700. And in total, the finance department's budget has increased approximately $41,000, and that would include all categories within that department. We have centrally located early retirement assessments. Previously, those were located in each department. We've moved those to the fringe department, so you'll see that within all budgets. We've moved advertising costs within all budgets to a centrally located advertising line item. And we've also moved IT equipment into the IT budget. Previously, departments would budget for their own IT equipment replacements, and we thought it was better served to have those budgeted locally. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the budget as presented.
Questions? I see Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, remind me now, Director Coppola, we have how many people in your department still handling grants, and how many are with the outsourced service CLA?
Thank you for the question. We have 2 full-time employees that are managing grant fiscal services internally, and I guess you could equate that to 2 other that are being serviced through a contracted service.
Do you anticipate any further transitioning from your department to the outservice company in fiscal 27?
At this point in time, I do not.
Okay. So I looked at your budget, and your salaries go down from 26 to 27 by call it $172,000. Your fringes go down by about $59,000, but your contractual services go up by $273,000. So if you call it savings by moving out, is roughly $231,000, but you're paying $273,000 more in contractual services. So net, we're paying $40,000 more. I don't know if those numbers reflect this switch of the people who are doing grant work, or whether there's something else embedded in the contractual number that is not right to allocate to grant administration. I just want to see if my numbers are accurate or they're not, put it that way.
Yes, thank you for the question. The grant management services and within your contractual services within finance are increasing $160,000. The other increases are associated with the hosting services for our ERP system, the electronic budget book. And in addition to that, we have within the finance budget administrative fees, associated with the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. So we're in the process of closing on a loan for PFAS remediation or planning. And there'll be a one-time administration fee, a larger administration fee of a one-time amount of $7,706. That's also included with that.
You also get you're going to have $450,000 in revenue in your department. Is that from this administration fee you're talking about?
The revenue associated with the finance department is the de minimis that is charged to grants. There's a 15% federally allowed
Yep.
de minimis, that's what that represents.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for your answers. Clarifies it. Thank you.
I want to follow up before I get to Dr. O'Malley. I was looking at so contractual services. That's not just the grant, right? The grant people. You said there's other people because it went from 241 to 514, essentially. So that's not just the 2 grant people that we contracted out. That's other other contractual services that may not be people oriented. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, Chairwoman.
Okay. Because I noticed that gratefully you went down 2 full employees, but your fringes only went down 15 grand. I'm sorry, 11.7, 11.8. I would think that it would get by getting 2 people off the books, 2 full-time employees off the books, the fringes will go down significantly more than that. The last line on the expenditures group.
So the fringe benefits it's a decrease of $59,000. And you were thinking, Chairman, that it should be decreased further?
I thought it would have been a bigger decrease, that's all.
Okay.
Salaries went down 15 and the other one went down a little under 12. So, but that's.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're not interrupting me at all. So is there have you added fringes from another source to make that only an 11.79% decrease, or is that specifically the number you save by having 2 less employees in finance?
Well, that represents, number one, a 15% increase in health insurance, based on the employees within our department as of, we pick a day in October where we begin that budget process. And so it was who was enrolled in particular plans at that point in time. When we budgeted FY26, we budgeted for a position of financial analyst, and we budgeted the highest health insurance rates, meaning family plan. And the person that was brought on board does not have that plan. So there's some changes internally that would reflect increases and decreases in the budget. But fringe benefits includes group insurance, which is health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, retirement assessment as well. And so the retirement assessments countywide is measured on September 30th of every year. And it's people in those positions as of that day. Now we have reduced our staff since September. We had a staff member leave county services. And so these numbers, the retirement assessment would be based on folks in those positions as of that date. Okay.
But this reflects this fringes reflects the 15% estimate that has now gone down to 8. So that will change over the next several days or couple of weeks.
Yes,
right?
we have those numbers.
That will
for
change.
you.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That was my question. I know I have 2 more people here. Delegate O'Malley, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, Director Coppola, so essentially 2 areas that we have been handling are now going to be outsourced to consultants. Now, my general take is that that's typically going to cost more money, and it appears that that is the case. Were these changes prompted by loss of personnel? Is that I guess I'm looking for what's the rationale here, since we're not saving money. Did it relate to personnel that we've lost who are not replaceable to do these functions, or what's the basis for outsourcing 2 significant areas of your department operations?
I thought that was the inability to hire the right person. Do I recall that correctly, Director Coppola?
Thank you for the question. Actually, outsourcing these services is a significant savings
Yeah.
to Barnstable County. And so much that it really is the cost of salaries without regard to fringe benefits, IT equipment, training, and certification of these staff members. And so there is a significant savings with regard to outsourcing these services.
I like that. Thank you. And now
All right.
I'm going to go to Delegate Killian.
Sure, Mr. Chair, just to follow up your comments earlier about the fringes, because I did the same math. And just to check my math, we're looking at about, for FY 26, roughly 500,000 was for fringes, which is about, if it was 11 full-time employees, that'd be about 45,000 per employee. And so that would be the question, is we were losing 2, you would think the difference would be about 90,000. Is that math correct, Director Coppola, or am I missing something there?
Well, we've had staff turnover and they participate in different plans. We've had a member retire in the current fiscal year and replaced with another staff member that takes a different plan. So, you know, I don't think that we can average it at $45,000 per employee. As the FY 26 budget was prepared based on enrollment in particular plans for the personnel that were on staff, and the same is true for FY 27. So choices are made. People's circumstances change. We bring new employees on. Those, you know, I mean, there are a multitude of changes that occur within any given fiscal year.
I understand the vagaries of that can exist. So the question is then, these numbers then, are they accurate based on the FTEs that are no longer there? Or are they just kind of an estimate?
No, these are based on, so the finance department selects a date in October and uses that date throughout the county for all departments to budget for group insurance. And those are folks actually in plans at that time. So this, and then further, this is reduced by the reduction in staff. So in September, we had a staff member that was working for Barnstable County, managing grants. We no longer are budgeting for that staff member in salaries, nor are we budgeting for them in fringe benefits. So it's not an estimate. The only estimate that we made was a 15% increase in health insurance premiums.
Okay, so I think you did answer my question, that the numbers that you have budgeted are specific to the particular
Yes.
employees. Okay, thank you
Yes.
very much.
Okay. And to your credit, when you look at the whole number, you're only up 2.05%. Right? I mean, that's pretty good. Just looking at the whole picture, no matter how you did it, you know, that's a pretty good sum total. And I'm really glad that we're able to legally hire contract employees. I know that can be an issue if they're there for too long, and that's stuff that's beyond my ability. But I always appreciate the fact that you can save money by getting the same services without the same fringe benefits being paid. So I appreciate that. And I now see Delegate Friesel.
Chair, I would move approval of the Finance Department budget as submitted by the board.
Thank you. I need a second.
I'll second.
Delegate Killian seconds. Is there further discussion from the Finance Committee? Seeing none, roll call, please, Mr. Clerk.
You didn't lose me, even though you tried. That's Deputy Speaker Friesel.
Yes.
And next is Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Chair Omen,
Gladly, yes.
and Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
We've lost him. I'll go on record as saying
You,
that's a
you did
5-0.
not. That is 5 for your roll call, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, the witching hour of 6 p.m. is approaching quickly. Before we do any more stuff, I would like to indulge the board to say, can we take the rest of these things and move them till Thursday? And hopefully have a quicker meeting then too, because we've reached the 2-hour mark. I would ask to the indulgence of the committee. Can I ask a discussion on that, please?
Mr. Chair, what time are we proposed to meet on Thursday?
No, Owen?
I believe that's 4 starting now, and what that looks like, I know we've got the assembly, we've got, someone help me, the assembly, the commissioners, we just.
No, there's no assembly meeting this Wednesday.
No, the assembly budget.
Assembly budget.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
Are there any ones
Sorry.
else I'm forgetting?
Those pesky
forgetting?
assembly people have spent all that money.
I'm trying to think of what else we need to vote on, but
We have to finish the committees that reported to us. We have got.
we do, but I'm saying, I think that those are the last like actual presentations that we're looking at.
We don't. We haven't done miscellaneous. We haven't done
Okay.
fringe. We haven't done debt.
Which is all in the, miscellaneous fringe and debt. So,
Yeah.
we've got 12 minutes till 6, and we've got is Coppola there for that as well.
I think, yeah.
And then we've got those last 2 budgets, one of which requires Mr. Dutton, Regional Administrator Dutton, for the Commissioner's office. And then, like I said, the rest of the budgets that need to be reported on, it's members of the Finance Committee that are doing the reporting. And so, I think that's what it looks like in general.
I'm at your pleasure. Maybe we could get Director Coppola's thing done right now, the next one, so we don't have to return her to this wagon train of duties. What do you think? What do you think, Clerk Fletcher, and the committee, by the way?
Yes, let's move on.
Move on. All right.
Move on with Director Coppola.
Yeah. Clerk Fletcher, can you present the second and hopefully final thing for Director Coppola to report to us on?
Well, it's shared costs, right? Miscellaneous fringe and debt. I think the deputy speaker told me earlier today, there's no salary reserve, so that's language that's being dragged from previous years. But
Okay.
shared costs, real, am I right, Director? No?
Director Coppola, did you, is that an accurate statement of what you need to tell us?
Would you like to review fringe benefits and miscellaneous and contingency?
I would like to get you off the hook after this. I'm getting an echo.
I'm afraid that's coming from me. I've got 2 episodes. I've got 2 instances of this open. I'm going to close and come back.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, in deference to your time structure, Director Coppola, I'd like to see if you could give us that information and then, be of no further need here, having completed your obligations to us. Is that okay? Owen, have you got that down? Can we get that done?
Sounds good to me.
Right. What do you want to start with on your agenda? We've kind of gone through fringe, but I mean, what you've got the agenda set up in your mind, I know.
Oh, no, I mean, I think that's what's left, right?
Okay.
Is
Delegate Frizzell, please.
Yeah, as I see it, there's fringe, miscellaneous, and contingency expenses and debt service and interest. Those 3 numbers, that I only find those in the ordinance. I don't see anything in the budget book for those. So I don't know whether Director Coppola would like to explain what's in the fringe benefits number, which is 1.9 million. It's a significant number. And then the miscellaneous contingency number, 2 million. That's a big number. And debt service is $761,000. Not as big a number, but I'd be interested to know what principal and interest is being paid by $761,000. So I have some, questions about those three numbers because there's no explanation in the budget book. There's just the ordinance. That's all I could find.
Director Coppola, you ready?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moman. Thank you, Delegate Frizzell. I was looking at the budget book, digital budget book this weekend and noticed the same, that category is missing. So those categories that you mentioned are missing and we'll have that fixed immediately. But I can tell you what is can provide you with some information, narrative information as to what is contained within the fringe budget. What's contained within the fringe budget includes all of the early retirement assessments. And so those are county employees that were provided a provision to retire early from the county. Those were historically placed in all of the department's budgets. And this year, a change was made to bring it into a central budget. In addition to that, there's group insurance for retirees. That's $1.3 million. There's workers' compensation, and that is $106,000. And then there's a new item in the budget for FY27, and that's a line item that for employees that opt out of health insurance. It's proposed that a stipend is provided to those employees that opt out. And that is budgeted in FY27 or proposed at $135,000. There's a significant increase in workers' compensation, and that's due to the audit for fiscal year 25, which was just received within the last month. It resulted in an additional premium of $28,000. And so we see a significant increase in that line item as well. That's everything that's contained within the fringe budget.
Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I'm hearing that recitation of the numbers here, Director Coppola, are these like just fixed cost? I mean, there's just like nothing we can do to, get those numbers in a different place. They're just like, we have fixed costs that we've already agreed to pay under early retirement. We have these post-employment benefits that we're funding to some extent. And these workers' comp, all these things are just fixed. They're sort of externally controlled. We have no way of altering what those numbers look like. Is that what I'm hearing, or am I wrong?
Well, currently, the county provides the same benefits to retirees as it does for active employees. And that would include coverage of 75% of health insurance premiums for both active plans. If employees are under the age of 65, they must stay on an active plan. So it would be 75% the county would absorb, if you will, of those costs. In addition to, there are additional supplemental plans for those on Medicare, which the county also provides 75% funding. And that's a county initiative and not required by any state law.
So, I mean, we're talking about, I think you mentioned that number could be 1.3 million. So in order for us to make a difference here, if we're looking for some ways to keep our budget in a sustainable, balanced manner, one of the things we could do is we could change the 75% number. We could change the supplemental number. So we could change some of these benefits that are being provided at a very high contributory rate by the county at 75%. I mean, we could do that even if we kept the current employees, the non-retired employees at 75%, or could we not do that? Just trying to see what kind of flexibility we might have, because these are big numbers.
I think that I should turn that over to the county administrator.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, there are adjustments that you could make to retiree contributions. But I guess that's the short answer. I'm not exactly clear. It's about how what your threshold is or what the minimum amount is. But I know that we could change it from 75-25 to something different.
Thank you. Delegate Frizzell, further, or do you want to have Director Coppola continue?
Well, on fringes, those are the only questions I have on fringes. I know that none of us would like to see, cuts in this budget here, and maybe now is not the year we need to, but, this cost keeps coming up. Again, this is another area where we may have to look in FY28 and other years as we're trying to maintain a sustainable, balanced budget, which means we're not dipping into reserves to meet our every year obligations. And these are pretty high obligations. They're pretty generous, frankly, compared to a lot of what's out there in the, universe of employees and retirees.
But the path to that is somewhat lengthier than the budget of 2020, of the FY 2026, right? 2027, I mean. The path to correct that would not be today or tomorrow, I would think, unless we don't pass it, unless we cut it and let them have at it, I guess. I'm not sure that that's good public policy.
Well,
No
I'm not advocating for it. I'm merely trying to say that, there's something else on the menu as we move forward.
Yeah, no.
There are things we've come up with tonight that could be ways in which we trim our budget to keep us on a balanced budget without dipping into reserves.
Yeah. Well said. Anything else? The group insurance, workman's comp. That's an interesting one. I mean, it's not a budget killer, but it went up over 28%, I guess, this year. Just as various claims that happen as things happen during the fiscal year, right? That's all you can say about workman's comp.
Thank you for the question. Workers' comp is based on salaries paid, and actual salaries. So when the audit is conducted, it takes into account salaries that were expended during the fiscal year. And those were greater than what was anticipated when those rates were set 2 years prior. So they set the rates 2 years prior based on salaries at that point in time. And when they come to do the audit, prepare the audit, they look at actual salaries for the they looked at actual salaries for the fiscal year of 2025. And that resulted in an increase, as well as our experience rate in participating in workman's comp injuries.
Okay, good. Delegate O'Malley, please.
Right. Following on that same question, our experience rate. So, in fact, does this reflect that we had an increased number of claims? And if so, what do we need to do about that? Is that something that reflects on the work environment? Explain a little bit about what the claim experience here is that has driven at least part of that.
I can
Chairman?
take that one. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Carol.
No, go ahead.
I think Delegate O'Malley's right. The claims experience does play a significant role in the annual request. We have seen over the past couple of years an increased number of workplace incidents. We have responded to that. We have a contract with a safety consultant who has provided guidelines for a number of different departments, safety guidelines for a number of different departments. So we are on top of it. I think as Carol pointed out, it's a function of salary and a function of your claims experience. So the more work we can do to reduce the number of claims, the better our annual rate will be on the workman's comp line item. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Delegate Prezell.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll just point out that, this is another collateral increase by increasing salaries. So when we talk about salaries, then, this is another one of those, quote, fringes that also is affected by virtue of increased salary. So it has a multiplier effect, is what I'm getting at, by our stepping up people and COLA people, and compensation schedules change because we do compensation studies. All of these things feed into where this budget is headed, because we know as a county overall, close to 80% of our expenses are all attributable to personnel. That's the big nut. But having said that, I would move the fringe budget as proposed by the board.
Before you do that, can I ask
Yeah.
one other question about, there's a new item called opt-outs. I imagine that is a decision that was made to save money, but it also is 135 grand. Is there a calculus because of that number of 135 grand that says if we put 135 grand offering opt-outs to healthcare, is there a chronology? Is there an application that says that we will save X dollars by doing that? Or is this something that you're hoping that maybe you'll save money if people take up on the opt-outs? I know it's a new formula you put in there, a new number, but I'm sure the intent is to save money. But
Ian, I can handle that one, Chair.
Thank you.
If amenable. We have polled the entire staff to determine, what amount of interest there would be if we offered some type of sort of stipend or some sort of incentive not to take county insurance. Based on that survey, and again, you can't hold people. Unfortunately, you can't hold people to a decision. The health benefits are offered to them, and we can't dictate, whether they take them or not. So the benefit of doing the survey was that we could figure out exactly what kind of interest there may be in this. So based on the survey that we did of all of our staff, there was enough interest to propose this stipend for those that don't take insurance. The savings would be on the side of those that dropped their existing county group health insurance and opted for presumably a spouse's benefit at the spouse's workplace. So there was enough of an interest there to justify budgeting the 135 this year.
And we don't know if it will be used or not, but that's the offer. And each individual that takes that offer will save the county money.
Exactly.
That's the goal. Okay.
Exactly.
That's all I wanted. Now, Delegate Prezell, you were going to make a motion.
Well, I was to try to move this budget along. On the other hand, I just, would like to know whether committee members feel comfortable voting the budget at this point without seeing the detail that will be in the budget book, because it's going to be provided according to Director Coppola.
Again, I think that it's prudent to wait. So I don't necessarily, this is one of those votes that we don't really need to take, and we need the information to make a better decision on the vote. That's my opinion, but we have other members of the committee. Any thoughts from the other three members? Well, I would say that means that, now I see Delegate O'Malley.
Well, since we're going to be meeting again in a few days, I don't see any reason not to give ourselves time, get that information, and reconsider it at that point.
Thank you. All right. But we'll have that information. We'll be able to make that decision without the presence of the Director of Finance, hopefully, and get her back to her important job. Anyway, now we're well past the 6 o'clock deadline that I've always had as a chair, and I would like to defer this and reignite the rest of this meeting on Thursday. If that would be my suggestion. I would like to hear any opinions, or would the majority want to continue? Delegate Frizzell, please.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't discussed miscellaneous, and we haven't discussed debt service. So if we move it to Thursday, we'll probably need to ask the director.
Okay, good point. I thought that was done. Sorry.
Oh.
Okay, so we still have Director Coppola here. So can you inform us about those other two parts of the budget, please?
Sure, I would be happy to. If we started with miscellaneous and contingency, this category includes items such as audit expenses, actuary services, the Mary Dunn court judgment, legal services, education of employees, advertising. There's a new budget item proposed for 27 of a compensation study of $40,000. Liability insurances are included in this category, unemployment compensation. And then the transfer to PFAS operations and maintenance fund, which is actually a decrease of $197,000 over what was budgeted in FY26. In FY26, we had budgeted $650,000. Working with our environmental engineers, they have recommended a reduction in that cost to fund the operations and maintenance, ongoing operations and maintenance of the former fire training facility. So that budget is reduced to $453,000. That's what's contained within this category.
Thank you. Delegate Frizzell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I clearly hearing all that and seeing the size of this number, 2 million something, I would like to see the specifics before I begin to get comfortable with all of these numbers and what's being spent on. It's over 2 million, it's a lot. It's a big number in the budget. And I just think we need to see how that is laid out in the budget book before we can really say yes or no, or anything that needs to be further worked on.
Thank you. Point taken. Any other comments regarding miscellaneous contingency in the roughly $2 million range from the board? Seeing none, I will guess that means that we're not ready to vote on miscellaneous contingency. That we need the data. Okay, the sooner the better. And I know that Director Coppola is very, very good at that making up that time and getting us the numbers. That's great. Now, what's the other one?
Debt service.
Debt service, right? 761 grand. Director Coppola?
Debt service category contains a borrowing from 2017. That borrowing was for various purposes. And the principal on that bond, in addition to there was a capping project that was funded by Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. There's principal due on that note, as well as anticipated principal due on the PFAS planning project, which is that loan is currently in the process of closure. So as far as principal payment on existing debt that's included in the general fund, that is contained within those lines. In addition to that, Barnstable County settled with the town of Barnstable to reimburse the town of Barnstable for some borrowing that they incurred. And that was in the agreement that the county entered into with the town. In addition to that, the county borrows short-term loans on an annual basis to fund particular projects, and is provided with the ability via general laws in Massachusetts to pay down those short-term notes over time. And so there's $300,000 budgeted to pay down those short-term notes. And there's a variety of projects that are included in those short-term notes. And then there's various interest that is provided for with all of the principal payments and the borrowings that have occurred. And in total, this is an increase. This line item is an increase of $64,000.
Delegate Frizell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's another category I really would like to see the breakdown better. I'd like to know well, how much longer, what the outstanding principal is in all these debts, and how long they're outstanding for, and what the interest rates are. I mean, some of these smaller debts, it could make sense. I don't know, maybe it doesn't, but could make sense. Just pay it off. We got reserves. Just pay it off instead of continuing to incur interest on these loans. When we have a reserve fund, undesignated general fund reserve fund of over $6 million or something. So I'd be interested to see what these specific debts are. Obviously, to the extent to which we are legally or obligated under terms of contract to pay certain amounts at certain times, then our hands are tied unless we can prepay without penalty on some of these debts.
So can we get a list of those, Director Coppola? Can we?
Yes,
see that?
absolutely.
Okay, then we'll likely not want to vote on that today as well. Okay, and I think that concludes Director Coppola's obligations to us, and I thank you so much for your valuable time, and my apologies for being so late with this. I didn't mean it to happen that way. Now, back to the committee and our clerk. It's 6:15, and I'd like to end this meeting now and tack the rest of it on to Thursday or perhaps Monday and continue it that way. Do I have any discussion from the board? Any of the 5 members to yay or nay?
I think that's a good plan, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Anything else? If I don't hear anything or see a hand raised, I'm going to assume that you agree. And that being said, Mr. Clerk, I'm going to ask that we vote in this meeting. Could I have a roll call?
I'll take that as a motion from you. And
I'll second.
So that
A
is
little enthusiasm there.
Deputy Speaker Frizell,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Chair Omen.
Yes.
I believe we are adjourned. So.
Especially all of you in the administration, especially. Thank you for your valuable time. I really appreciate it. It was